Good evening and welcome to a really special AMA tonight in September with Binance. And we've got the new Binance GM ANZ, all a bit of a mouthful, but we know what it all means. It's a very important position, Matt Poblocki. And also, I didn't catch James's title because he's a sub in tonight. He's the head of marketing for Binance ANZ, I think. Is that the right terms, James?
Yep.
That'll do. He's the boss man when it comes to marketing. When it comes to marketing, we're really excited to meet Matt. It's a relatively recent appointment, and we're going to hear a bit more about Matt's background and where he's come from. Thank you to everyone who's joining. Do drop in the chat where you're from. It's just really interesting. Tonight, we've actually pushed this one out through Luma invites as well, and we had quite a good response to that. So it'd be very interesting to know from which countries you're dialing in, just for anecdotal purposes. We're not going to be stalking you or anything. My name is Matt Hooper, and tonight we're going to be working through a few things. We're going to go through a little bit more about all things blockchain and some of the events that we've got coming up. And then we're going to dive straight into the chat. It's kind of like a fireside chat. We'll keep it pretty conversational. And do feel free to throw in your questions at any time in the chat, or even go on camera and open mic if you feel comfortable. You're most welcome to do that. And we're also going to have a look at one of Binance's latest products in terms of margin trading. We've got a deck that we're going to work through there, thanks to James, who's come on the call tonight in place of his colleague Liam O'Doherty. I'm Matt Hooper. I'm your moderator and host for tonight, and I'm heading up all things blockchain. Well, we do have a team working with us. We're a community-based organisation. We're a not-for-profit incorporated association out of Brisbane, Australia, and we run monthly events here in person in Brisbane, and we also stream live to the world on Zoom. And we do a range of these AMAs right throughout the year with all of our sponsors and various other industry partners as another way of engaging with the community. And we like to think of ourselves as a grassroots education-based organisation. We're not sort of pushing any particular messages or companies here. We are chain agnostic, and we're proudly chain agnostic. We like to literally talk all things blockchain. Been around for about 5 years. We have around 7,000 members now across different properties, and we are holding side events up in Token 2049. We've got 3 side events through both ATB and the Evolve Her Women's Social Impact Project. We've got a few events going on up there. So if you're going to be in Token, look us up, and you'll find on some of these slides I'll have links to our Luma calendars where you can find our events as well. Yeah, we do a whole range of events, very much grassroots, and we have a team working behind us, mostly volunteers, a couple of small paid positions in there to keep our socials ticking over, and various other admin tasks that are required, because we've got quite a lot of events coming up, as you're going to see in a minute. And the team we're always grateful to, and we've got an education hub. It's an online platform. It does have a community angle, but it's more geared around evergreen content and providing educational materials. You can find out a bit more by clicking through on that QR code, and we do have one of those for Evolve Her as well. There are different white labels in the education hub. A lot of interactivity there, as I say, evergreen content, some gamification, some incentivization to continue to engage on the platform. That's just part of our education outreach. All of what we do is possible thanks to our sponsors, of whom Binance is a very long-standing one. We really look forward to having our annual event with Binance. Traditionally, the last 2 or 3 years, they've taken the first event slot of the year, and it's a really nice way to kick off the event with the strong Binance brand. Take great time to thank all our sponsors. We're really excited to announce a community partnership collaboration with Consensus as well, which is enabling us to cross-promote our events, and also Consensus Hong Kong, which is in February, and Miami, which is I think in May of next year. So we're really thrilled as ATB to be doing that cross promotion and that collab. So you can find out a few details. If you do want to sign up for Consensus Hong Kong or Miami, I think it is, certainly Hong Kong, I think the discount code ATB15 applies to both of those, and you'll get 15% off the registration price. Other collaboration partners, we work with Evolve Her, that female, primarily female and male allies social impact project. Stand with Crypto, very good friends of ours, and we're actually going to be doing even more with them. We're actually one of their first tranche partners in Australia, and we're very proud to represent Brisbane and Southeast Queensland in that regard. We obviously work with Oz CryptoCon and also consensus, as I mentioned. Very quickly, we have a community newsletter that goes out on the first day of every month. This is highlighting events in Australia and around the world that we think might be of interest, not just our events, but events that are either in emerging technologies such as AI or the distributed ledger space. So you can sign up to that's on paragraph.com. You can sign up to that one by clicking through on the QR code. And I've got so many events, we've had to start cramming them onto single slides, shared slides rather than single slides per event because there are just so many. We've got main events going on up on the Tuesday, the day before Token 2049 in Singapore. We've got 3 side events, as I mentioned. We've also got a pre-Oz CryptoCon event that's about to go live, and we've got a pre-Blockies event. Blockies coming up later in the year. Also, lots more AMAs. The boot camp has been going on with Danielle. She's now in the 7th of 8 weeks of the boot camp. You can find that on the Luma calendar there. Lots more, still 2 or 3 more AMAs coming up this year as well. These are the women's focused events. As I mentioned, the boot camp that Danielle has been running with others. And during Oz CryptoCon, I'll call out the one down the bottom there. We're actually hosting an event on the Sunday morning of Oz CryptoCon, likely in the same building as ICC. That's just been finalized now. And Oz CryptoCon itself, you can get a 10% discount off registrations using the discount code ATB10. Oz CryptoCon is creeping up quickly, as is the Blockies, which is the week after in Melbourne this year. So that's the DECA annual awards ceremony and gala night. Although I think it's cocktail this year. I don't think it's black tie. Gents, that was quite a lot. We do have quite a lot going on at ATB, but I want to jump over and now chat to James and Matt. So Matt, what's your origin story? Can you dive in, please, a little bit into your background? I know you're trained as a lawyer and you've also been involved in a couple of startups. What's your elevator pitch going into your last few years?
Yeah, by the way, just before we jump into it, Matt, just as you were going through all the activities that you've got coming up and the events, etc., it really is genuinely exciting. It's really cool. Like
thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of work. I tell you, there is a lot of admin to put these things on. Anybody who knows who runs events, but we love it. Danielle, our co-founder, and I, we do love it. And I often talk about it's kind of a bit of an addiction. It's a bit of a drug. Putting an event out there and doing your best to promote it, to make it the best that it can be. You know, you have a tagline and a headline, and then when people turn up, it's a great satisfaction. So yeah, and the same with the online AMA. So yeah, but you're not interviewing me, but thank you.
No, that's great. I just want to say all power to you. And as you're reading out all those events, I was thinking about how engaged you and the community are. And
yes, absolutely.
That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, that's what's brought crypto and blockchain to life. So
it does thrive on it. Yeah, I'm really encouraged to hear that. I talked to Jonathan from Kraken in the same vein, and he talks about, you know, going back 10 plus years, this is sort of the grassroots is what's made crypto attractive, I think, to a lot of people. I think that community aspect. So
definitely, yeah, that community is critical. I'm sure we'll touch on that as we go through the chat. Yeah. By the way, is this audio okay?
Yes, you're sounding great. Yeah, it sounded like you're in a radio studio. Right. But it is that legal background, and then obviously entrepreneurial. Also worked in payments.
Yeah, so maybe just a quick snapshot. You're right. I trained as a lawyer and originally grew up in Adelaide, but then moved to Sydney where I worked in like private practice, but then quickly moved out of that world into I was lucky enough to get on that second wave, if you like, of the .com boom. And that was around about the time of, I'm going to date myself heavily here, but that was around about the time of, you know, Amazon was really booming, eBay was pumping, you know, Google was firing up hard. And so it was a fascinating time because we were really at the cusp of driving the adoption of online marketplaces, which were a new and emerging concept. And they're things we take for granted now, and they'll probably have analogies in our discussion as we go through today, but there were things that we take for granted nowadays, and they're just, everyone's got a marketplace, and the term is often misused. But again, it was one of those things where we had to create that as eBay. We had to grow that across Australia and New Zealand. It was quite an unusual concept for regulators, for the community, for others. And so I was really grateful to have that experience of bringing that new technology and those new platforms. So I was responsible for legal regulatory affairs, but also had, you know, commercial elements to my role. And then very quickly dived into the world of PayPal and got deeper into fintech. And again, going back to, first, just lucky enough to ride that wave of that PayPal.com boom from the very early days. And that was all about, fintech and adoption of digital wallets. The concept of a digital wallet didn't exist back then, right? And taking a credit card. So, and tokenizing it actually to use it in its truest sense, right? All those sorts of things, digital wallets, online payments, remittances. So it was a super exciting time. And then over time, I spent a lot more time on government regulatory affairs and policy and those sorts of things. So it really was about breaking the ice for payments and fintech. And then I, had some sort of side projects and businesses that I was involved in, platforms that I was starting to launch, with friends and with other business partners. And then when I was based out in Singapore, I was responsible for cross-border trade. So that was all about, I was with PayPal covering 170 international markets. And that was really about how do we offer our services globally to the world at large. Having spent a lot of time within the PayPal ecosystem, I was then approached to run Afterpay for Asia and start the Afterpay business there, which was super exciting. And
I don't think all these are on your LinkedIn. This is all even more interesting than your LinkedIn. So this is great.
Look, I got to fess up. My LinkedIn is probably like an unkept garden. I need to actually spend more time on it. I need to.
No, but this is fascinating because Afterpay, again, we almost take for granted. I've been around a little while. We take some of these. I mean, Afterpay almost feels like an institution, almost like a Xero does in terms of traditional online or e-commerce, accounting now. Like
100%. Yeah, definitely. And it's actually, look, that's interesting. I'll be careful what I say, but I remember when we were approached with the concept of Afterpay, and we were PayPal and we were big and we were in the market. And I remember having a strategic mindset of like, oh, I can't see that taking off, because everyone's got credit cards. Why would you need BNPL? We've all got access to, services like,
lay-by as it was.
Lay-by. Thank you. Yes, exactly. Got a mental blank. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but then to watch what Nick and Nat and the team built so quickly was super exciting. And then to be a small part of that journey when I was based out of Singapore, looking at how we would expand into the Asia region was real privilege and super exciting. And that was a strategic commercial role. And then to cut a long story short, we returned in a post-pandemic world back to Australia with the family. And I took a couple of years off to think about, what I was going to do next. The only thing is I didn't really take any time off. I thought I was going to have a sabbatical.
You started a startup. I bet you started a startup.
Yeah, startup. So, we helped co-found an equity crowdfunding platform and launch a couple of marketplaces for B2B businesses in Asia and helped fintechs enter the Australian market and board work and advisory work. So it was a real mishmash of things. And then to bring it to a head, when this opportunity came along to join Binance, for me, it was a no-brainer. It was a privilege, obviously, but I've been lucky enough to ride those other waves that I talked about. And clearly Binance is, at the head of this next wave. So it was super exciting opportunity.
We'll jump to that. Just before we get to that particular part of the story, what's the, was there a light bulb moment when you found out about crypto, or where it really started to seem, that it had real street cred? What was that moment for you?
Yeah, definitely. It was. I still remember it was back in 2013, and somebody gave me a bit of a Bitcoin. It's quite a well-known figure in Silicon Valley, and somebody who's now become a bit of a mentor. And that was for me, it was at the time, it was like, what is this? I've always been fascinated by new tech, right? The emergence of new tech and what implications is it going to have on society and commerce and law and policy and all those sorts of things, right? And so that was my first foray into it. And then during the PayPal years, we were looking at how would we embrace or not this technology, right? And so we had our own working groups. Then I was actually, spending time with the guys at what used to be called ADCA, right? The now DECA.
Yes.
So
with the PayPal hat on, though.
Yes, with the PayPal hat on. So I was in and out of that world, plus a lot of friends and confidants and stuff like that were very deep in it. So I was always in and around it and buying my own coins and getting involved in things.
Okay, so it really wasn't, it doesn't sound like it was much of a stretch at all for you to get involved. Like, some people from traditional, fintech land, I think you're either for or against it, or you have a moment where you become for it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, then let me qualify all that by saying one of the things with crypto is unlike probably so many other areas, the more you dig, the deeper you can get, and the more it's almost like quantum physics, right? You can just keep going down and down and down and down. And
Absolutely.
so, I won't say which level I think I'm at, but I'm certainly not. I'm definitely not a deep crypto.
But also not a novice. What's interesting, and none of this is all literally spontaneous now, folks. This isn't in our pre-canned questions, but for me, I find it interesting, and I try to get the message out that well, and the world's moved on again. When you talk about PayPal, you've got your PUSD, you've got the Stripe now building its own chain. Recent weeks we've heard much more about Google's own chain. I mean, there's this sort of this mainstream moment is almost really upon us, isn't it? It's just that maybe not everyone's aware of it yet.
Definitely. I mean, that's what's exciting about it. There's this sort of there's this disruption creep, right? And we went through it because we were the disruptors, and now we've been disrupted by Web3. And it's, even though the Web2 and Web3 worlds are in some ways by definition immiscible, they'll always find a way, right? And that's what we're seeing now. And we all know it, right? But we're seeing it with this, and I'm sure we'll get to this later, but the use of the stable coins and the tokenization of real world assets and all those sorts of things. But the banks and the other major institutions starting to really look at this space, especially overseas. And you're absolutely right, remittance providers and payments providers getting into the use of Ethereum and stable coins and all those sorts of things is a massive game changer.
Yes.
I
can well see why you were perhaps tapped for the role, or why you're well suited to the role with that background. I mean, it's with the cross-border payments, the history that you've had, obviously over a 20-year plus working career is really quite substantial. Don't forget, folks, to jump in with your own questions. If you feel brave to jump in and even go on voice, open the mic, or type in the chat. We will reserve a little bit of time at the end for open Q&A as well. But if anything prompts something that you feel is relevant, we're all Web3 curious or Web3 advocates here. So yeah, do feel free to jump in with any questions. It doesn't have to be just a couple of guys talking, and I will bring you in, James. We'll come to the marketing part of the chat soon. But the Binance story. So yeah, what you might have to give some official media comments here. But what's your sort of vision for where Binance is? And I know it's only early days, but what do you see as your sort of forward look as to what you'd like to do, or what Binance in this region is going to be doing?
Yeah, well, I'm 2.5, 3 months into the role now, and so I've got it all perfectly worked out.
Okay, great.
But
it's a small organization.
So in dog years, that's about 378 years, right? So in crypto terms. So I think critically, one of the things that I genuinely love about Binance, and I think is really important to any organization, is how customer centric it is. And I think that's one of the things that has helped it remain in its market position that it's currently got and has had for many years. I think understanding the Australian New Zealand consumer is going to be, or customer, sorry, I should say, because as you know, you've got multiple streams of customers, institutional, retail, and different levels as well. Understanding what they really want. It's very easy in this world, and we went through it in the fintech days as well. There were plenty of projects. We thought this is what people wanted. And the tech moves so quickly, maybe it's not. And so listening to the voice of the customer is critical. So I'd say number one is understanding really what our, especially Australian customers want in the context of this conversation. Obviously, we cover New Zealand as well, but understanding what they're looking for, and then using the tools globally to either innovate locally or bringing those that are already in existence elsewhere, right? So we're looking through the research we're doing, the voice of the customer activities, all those sorts of things will really help to give us a good understanding of what customers are looking for. That's the first thing I'd say. And then the second thing, which is really critical, is just rebuilding our foundation. And by that, I mean, we've had a good few years in the Australian market. We're privileged enough to occupy a fairly large segment of the market, and, being part of the world's, largest crypto exchange by volume really helps that. But we want to make sure that we're an engaged ecosystem partner, right? So we want to make sure that we're part of the community events, right? At all levels, and genuinely engaging. We want to make sure that we're engaging with the regulators and the other associations on the right level as well, and making sure that we build a solid foundation, right? A solid foundation that means we can innovate on top of that and give customers what they want and continue to listen to that and iterate. So I think
Yeah.
solid foundation first thing, and then building for, you know, customer needs would be the second. And that's, you know, we're already started on that journey.
Someone's asked a good question about staking, and maybe we could bring James in from a product point of view here as well. But the questioner Lou, sorry, asked, when might we see more significant staking mechanisms in ANZ? Either of you might want to take that one.
Sure. Look, it's one of those things we're looking at very carefully. Look, I'd say there's one fundamental piece which I think will come out of this discussion as we go through, which is, as you're all acutely aware, the Australian regulatory environment is evolving very quickly. And on the crypto side, it probably hasn't evolved as quickly as it should. And that's something that, you know, we're all in discussions with government and regulators about. And the regulators, to their credit, are doing whatever they can to try and, you know, create a clearer pathway so we don't live in this regulatory ambiguity. So it's definitely something we're mindful of. We know it's a customer desire. We just have to make sure that we get the right foundation, whether it's through licensing or otherwise, before we can look at these types of activities. But this will probably come out throughout the course of this conversation. And because I'm still, you know, relatively new, there'll be some things we can't talk about yet, but we're certainly, all I would say is watch this space, and we're working through things.
I mean, we won't spend too much time on the regulatory topic, but what I was going to try and tease out, without mentioning names, but there has been a big transition in the outlook from the US side, at least. But look, I follow this story, and I know it really is a multiplicitous, if that's a word, you know, story, because each jurisdiction has its own, you know, traditional financial regulations and you know, financial perimeter, etc. But what I was going to try and just even draw out from you briefly was how you feel the rest of the world, and particularly, I guess you're allowed best to speak to this region, is responding, or how it's even feeling almost in terms of you know, satisfaction or otherwise with the changes that are coming out of the US.
Yeah, that's a really big question. Let me try and answer it relatively simply. I think, you know, clearly we live in a hyper-connected world, right? With globalization, and crypto by definition is borderless in, you know, in blockchain. The approaches that are being taken are different. We all know what's happening in the US, and we know how much the current administration is championing to a great extent the blockchain world. I think in Australia, we're pretty good at looking at what other jurisdictions are doing and then trying to cherry pick, which sometimes means that we're maybe a little bit later to the game in terms of getting our regulatory framework together. But you've got the approach the US is taking. Then you've got the similar approach, a different approach to which the UK under MiCA is doing, and sorry, MiCA and obviously UK to some extent joined at the hip. But then you know, Singapore is another market, and you know, and then the Middle East. And so I know absolutely that both the government and the regulators are looking carefully at what each are doing. And I think we will, as a country, we will pick those things that we think are right for us in terms of what we think is necessary for regulating and, you know, making sure that our customers are safe at the end of the day. So that's a very long-winded way of saying, I think, yes, we're definitely watching, and the Australian landscape is looking at what the US is doing.
Yes,
but
I kind of sprung that one on you. Yeah.
There's, you know, cherry picking, and I actually think that's the right. I actually think it's the right way to go. Sorry to interrupt, Matt, but I was going to say I don't envy the job of the policymakers and the government. I've spent enough time around them in my life to know that it's not easy. And when you think how quickly this world is evolving, it's really hard. By the time anyone who's sat there and tried to draft a definition of something, by the time you drafted it, it's probably outdated, right? So then you've got to move to principles-based legislation, and you've got to look at everything differently. You've got to take stable coins differently, to payment mechanisms, to NFTs. And so we know that the Treasury has worked through this, and very soon they'll be consulting with industry, and we're waiting with bated breath for that to occur. But they're also looking very carefully at what the US and other jurisdictions are doing. So I think we'll just continue to cherry pick from
it. Is, yeah, we do hear one of our luminaries in the space talk about being a fast follower at times. So I find that to be perhaps, you know, maybe that's a bit tall poppy of us to say that, but it's, yeah, maybe we just want to play it a little bit safe. But yeah, let's not spend too much time on the regulations. We do have some good questions coming through. One on it's not so much, I'm not sure, well, I guess it is debanking debanking. Our good friend Martin has raised this on previous occasions. James has ably responded to that. I mean, perhaps the more interesting question, perhaps a tricky one for you to answer, but less tricky than the debanking, is on-ramps. And off ramps for that matter. I don't know what you can speak to from that point of view, from a Binance point of view. I know obviously other exchanges have different ways of dealing with this or not. And there are other products, I think of Black Sheep and others that have sprung up to try and deal with this on-ramp, off-ramp problem as well. But kind of, we're getting a bit curly here, but these are real live questions. So
no, I understand. And thanks for the questions. I'm going to link it back to the other one around, debanking. The Australian banking environment is relatively conservative. I think we all know that. And, some would argue that that's what got us through the GFC and other things. And, the regulators have
deposit guarantees and other such things.
Right. Yeah. So, they do a lot of good in the market, but they're also sometimes quite risk averse. And this is a space that's fast moving that they're not aware, overly probably geared up to deal with from a risk perspective, in terms of the way that they see it. So what I would say is we're actively working on both the banking side as well as exploring, the on-ramp, off-ramp opportunities, and just watch this space. Let us work through what we're working through, and hopefully we'll, be able to give and serve the needs of the customers sooner than later, because people have found workarounds, others have got, clunky systems. We've got reasons for why we're in the position we're in, but it's something we're working through actively, and I can't really say too much more than that.
No, that's fine. No, great answer. Thank you. My good friend Eric Tingan Wang, who's actually a computer science graduate from UQ, has gone on to land a role in what I believe is Web3 cybersecurity. So he's actually he's a friend of mine. He's asked a good question about. So we've covered the regulation to some degree, at least broad brush. But he's raising issues around, or questions around, making sure all KYC and AML requirements are handled. And then I think he has a follow-on, and how Binance cooperates with law enforcement regarding helping scam victims. Scams are obviously front of mind for both traditional payments, banks, everyone in finance, really.
Yeah. So, yeah, look, absolutely. Look, you don't get to the size of Binance globally unless you invest heavily in compliance and risk management. And this has been, I might get this stat wrong. I think something like, close to 25% of our workforce is now dedicated to, compliance and risk management. I have to say, coming into the organization, I was blown away by the level of security, in terms of even how we operate amongst ourselves. I won't go into what those things are, but it was next level, and more than the sort of fintechs that I've been part of in the past. So yes, look, KYC is obviously something that has to be done, right? It's something that organizations, if you want to play in a regulated space, you have to do, and you have to do it properly. We work closely with the regulators to ensure that we're, doing what we can to, verify our customers and complying with the law, as well as trying to keep our customers safe, right? I'm just going to go off on a tangent for a sec, which is, KYC shouldn't be seen as a burden or something that you have to do because local requirements require it. It's actually something which can serve you really well, because it means that you help to filter out bad actors. It means that you can help to actually have a more real database of customers, and you know who you're dealing with a bit better, right? I've been involved in plenty of companies where you've spun up and you can have just, millions of bots creating accounts, and that's good enough, right? We want to create a stable, responsible platform that has real customers involved. And so, yes, we've got a lot of cybersecurity. We've got a lot of KYC processes that we go through, and we're always looking to evolve those as our requirements evolve. And, all countries have, slightly different variations and approaches to that.
Yes, no, thank you. I think that's kind of covered Cynthia's question as well. She's asking about VASPs becoming AUSTRAC regulated entities under AML Tranche 2 reforms. What opportunities might this present, such as greater levels of partnership and collaboration? And this is the part of the question I'd bring out, maybe, is partnership or collaboration with the traditional banking sector rather than the AUSTRAC part of the question.
Yeah, look, so again, I think we've touched on that, and it's a great question. This is the really exciting part, I think, where the ecosystem, TradFi, and Web3 are no longer like oil and water. They're not so immiscible, and this is where the partnerships have to occur. And this is where we take the ecosystem, we mature it through licensing, we mature it through uplifts in whatever areas we need to, and then we start to have more meaningful conversations with the banks, with other partners out there. And again, that could be card schemes. It could it could be third-party payment platforms. It could be things we haven't even thought of yet that are emerging. And I think as we go through, one of the fundamental gates that we will get through will be these DApp reforms that Treasury is talking about. And that will be the great leveler, because at that point, that's when, if you want to play in this space, you've got to ensure that you're doing all the right things, but that then gives you a seat at the table with all these potential partners. And something that I'm excited, and the rest of the team's excited about exploring as well, because I don't think a week goes by, or sometimes a day goes by, where you don't get approached by somebody with some cool new idea that they're doing, right? In institutional, in retail, whatever it is. And yeah, like it's actually hard to keep up with them, and we're excited about exploring those opportunities.
Yes, no, that's very true. And I think I want to weave this over to maybe the product side a little bit, and it might get a lot easier. I think we'll bring James in as well. But a couple of questions coming up from Rushdie. Does Binance partner with emerging? And I have this, some people ask me this actually that I meet at events. They ask me if, from an engineering or like their founders or startups, they actually do want to work with some of the bigger exchanges. So Rushdie's question is, do you partner with emerging Web3 projects to co-develop or launch specific utilities? And if so, what criteria would you be looking for? I don't know if you've been briefed on this in your early days at Binance.
Yeah, so this goes back to us being approached fairly regularly by new innovative ideas. I think there is a process, James, and you can sort of keep me honest here. There is a process that we've got. If people have something that they think is really burning and they're really excited to share it, happy to sort of look at it and then share it with the rest of the organization. There is a process and criteria. I'm not overly familiar with what they are yet, but clearly we get these approaches all the time globally. I mean, from the C-suite down, people are always getting approached. Oh, you're with Binance? I've got this great idea. Can I send you this? So I would invite a massive onslaught of pitch decks being sent through.
Yes.
But certainly happy to hear of things if you want to ping us on LinkedIn or whatever, and then we can try and direct it to the right team within Binance.
I think that's
I know
that's a good point. I think it kind of speaks to the breadth of Binance and just how many touch points like we have within the ecosystem. So when talking about like supporting projects, there's obviously listing new tokens, which is what we're primarily known for as a trading platform. There's very not secretive to us internally. Like we don't know who's in the listing team. It's a very separate process to maintain the integrity. And so the only way anyone can list a token is going through the same portal, applying online, and then it goes through due diligence and a decision's made. But then there are other ways that Binance partners and invests in emerging businesses. I think recently Binance Labs has been spun out. So that's a separate entity, and that's investing in Web3 projects across the ecosystem. There's also Binance Chain, which has its own development aspect to it and invests and supports early stage builders who are building on Binance Chain. So yeah, it just kind of depends what the project is and whereabouts it would kind of fit. So
absolutely
Great.
fascinating.
Thanks for that, James.
No, and I think that does bring us over to the product side as well. But we haven't had much chance to talk to James because the answers from Matt have been just really, really gold. So thank you for sharing those 20 plus years of experience with us, Matt.
Oh, no, thank you.
I feel like we could go for another hour at least, but from the marketing point of view, do you want to just maybe explain your role, James? And I think in James and Liam, you have there two incredibly gifted and very, you see, there's an incredible breadth of knowledge, I think, across the platforms there. James, do you want to speak to what's new in terms of Binance marketing or what's on the horizon, the localization into Australia, NZ, any challenges there, anything you like?
Be careful what you ask for there, Matt. Free reign.
Within 5 minutes, within a
I've got a
5 minute window.
tendency to
Yeah, yeah.
yeah to go down a rabbit hole. But no, thank you for the kind words. So yeah, I've been heading up marketing for Binance Australia and New Zealand for the last 3 years. Me and Liam actually started within a month of each other, and
All
yeah, it's
right.
been quite a journey in what we thought was a bullish market in July 2022, but in hindsight was very bearish and got very bearish very quickly. But I think that's what they say, you can't time the market. It's better to have time in the market rather than timing the market, and I've definitely benefited from seeing the various cycles. For me personally, massively motivated by the challenge and the goal of onboarding the next million Australians into crypto. And globally, we're on a mission to onboard 1 billion people. So we're up to 287 million. We're about to hit 300 million in the coming month or so, which is really exciting. But yeah, the mission is still very, very early stages. And so
How
from a
many of those are
marketing
Australian? Sorry, James, do you have a number?
in Australia,
Is
we're
that
like
public?
we're about for this group, we're about 1 million, just over 1 million
Hmm. Hmm.
Aussies. And then yeah, globally 287 million.
Sorry, yeah, keep going. Yeah.
But yeah, like the goal is to onboard like the next million Aussies and Kiwis into crypto. But it's a challenge that massively like motivates me and is the reason I moved into the industry. Previously I was in gaming and socials, spent time at Facebook in London and TikTok when it launched in Australia. But really caught the crypto bug around, like, obviously you heard about it back in like 2015, 16, 17, but never really put skin in the game. And then 2020, along with a lot of people stuck at home, went down the investing rabbit hole and became really interested in Web3 and crypto, and decided I'm spending this much time in it, I might as well work in it. So yeah, it motivates me to move into finance in this industry. And I think that from a marketing perspective,
Mm.
it's the challenge of communicating the benefits of what is inherently quite an abstract and technical technology um, is something that I don't think anyone's cracked yet. And I love trying to do that. So explaining crypto in like simple terms, meeting people where they're at, building trust and credibility in what has been an industry which has had a pretty negative reputation um, amongst normal people, I'd say. And so, yeah, our marketing efforts at Binance Australia and New Zealand span across like multiple channels. So, like a lot of fintechs, we're investing heavily in paid ads. We do SEO, we're sending out emails all the time. But I think what really excites me is, as Matt mentioned, our focus on community and doing in-person events. Binance, like, has run thousands of events from the ground up, and that's why I think it's amazing to see all the work that you guys are doing at all things blockchain. And that kind of ethos, like you said, is inherent to crypto and is so unique about crypto and Web3. And that's something that Binance started doing a long time ago when individual volunteers would just get people together and run events. And now we're running events, every day of the week, essentially. We've got an event in Adelaide for our Adelaide community with over 150 registrations there.
You were down in NZ recently. I'm sure I saw something in Auckland.
NZ, I was just looking at the calendar this week, actually. There's events in Mexico, Italy, Niger. We've got one in Australia, literally every day of the week. So, our events over this year will probably get 400, 400 Binanceans, as we call them, down to events. And then and that's a really big part of what we do, both at a global scale and then also locally. The other two things that I think are relatively unique to us are socials, and I think social is quite a big thing in crypto. Like, obviously, crypto Twitter is got its own reputation, but a lot of people are finding information and educating themselves on crypto through YouTube. Instagram is like one of our is probably our fastest growing channel.
Fascinating.
Twitter is still like incredibly important, but crypto has naturally lived on Twitter. And what's onboarded like the first 500 million isn't necessarily the same platform that's going to onboard the next 500 million. And that's why
Mm.
platforms like Instagram and YouTube are incredibly important and interesting for us to reach those new audiences. And then as an extension of that, connecting with creators. So again, and what is inherently quite intimidating for people to kind of get into. It's a financial investment. There's a bit of hesitation sometimes. And so partnering with people that have trust and credibility and built an audience for themselves and can take people along on that journey is an area that we're really focused on. So partnering with young creators, and historically that's been with crypto native creators and influencers, but now more so it's around lifestyle creators and influencers, people that might not know much about crypto or specific tokens, but are really keen and curious, and they're learning and they're bringing people along on that journey. And I think
And
that's the real
academic
benefit.
institutions, sorry, James, too. I've noticed that you and Liam do manage to interact with academic institutions as well.
Yeah, like Binance Academy has been an incredibly important part of the mission. In fact, I just got some recent stats. I think it's 286,000 Australians have accessed Binance Academy in the last year alone,
Mm.
which just goes to show how important it is as a educational resource. And then, yeah, we partner with universities up and down the country over the last few years, including with Eric
Yes,
as well,
indeed.
I think at the University of
Former chair
Queensland.
of UQ Blockchain Club, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, it's great to reconnect again, and yeah, the amount of people that we've met up and down the country, and young people that are super passionate and doing things, and that's why it's great to see, Eric, that you've moved into the industry full time as well.
Yes, it is. I actually use him as a, like I say, I hold him up as a success story. My really quickly, my a bit of career advice. I often get asked this by people in their early 20s. I would say you may have the desire to jump into Web3, but an employer generally wants you to have some tangible skills, for better or worse. That's the way hiring works. So I generally recommend that you can go through and complete your current path. If you want to be a lawyer, or if you want to be a do a computer science degree, and then maybe midstream towards the end of that and beyond, you might then decide to specialize into the Web3 space rather than make it everything up front. That's my tiny little bit of advice, which Eric agrees with by the looks of it. Now, look, James, we're running short of time because there's been honestly so much good fodder for discussion. Do you want to have a quick look at this margin deck?
We touched on it briefly.
Yeah, all right. I'll bring it up if you like.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Does that come up now?
Yeah. So just to make people aware if they weren't already, but like we offer margin to our Australian users. We're one of the relatively few platforms that do. And it's more of an advanced trading tool for advanced traders. And I have to caveat this by saying, beginners should really conduct like thorough research because there are some higher risks associated with margin due to the leverage nature of the product. But that's essentially it. It essentially allows you to trade with funds provided by a third party, in this case, Binance, and it forms what is essentially an over collateralized loan. So it means you can take collateral that you have or assets that you have, such as Bitcoin, and then borrow up to 10 times its value to support your trading positions. And one of the things unique to margin is the fact that one, you can use this leverage, but two, you can start taking positions. So you can either long the market or short the market, and start using some of the more advanced trading functionality to put in stop orders and limits to really capture and really trade market trends. So, why trade with us? Again, margin is kind of an extension of our bread and butter core trading platform, our spot exchange, which has over 600 trading pairs. Some of the lowest fees, if not the lowest fees in the market, starting at 0.1%. Highest liquidity, really low slippage, deep tight spreads. And then, yeah, something unique to our margin product as well is that the trades are actually executed real time through the platform rather than internal. There's two types of margin that you can use. One is cross margin, so that's when you pool like a number of different assets, whether it's like Bitcoin or USDT, and you can borrow up to 5 times against that. Or you can do isolated margin, which is just using one asset as collateral and then trading that asset specifically, which allows you to do up to 10%. So yeah, it's for those that are really into trading and looking to take that next step and leverage more of the tools available. Margin's definitely worth looking into. And if that's piqued anyone's interest, we do currently have a bit of a promo available for people to try out margin if you trade over $1,000 in volume, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually not when you take in consideration that leverage. then you can get up to $12 in trading fee rebates, and some other offers as well as part of our Australian crypto convention competition that we're running at the moment. So yeah, happy to share this with anyone after the call, or make it available. And happy to kind of answer any questions about margin. But yeah, didn't want to spend too much time on it because I think
Martin's thrilled. No, Martin is seriously keen to try out different and new things and different exchanges. So yeah, I'm just flicking through the deck there, which will be captured on the recording as much as anything, but I'm trying not to go too quickly. Just so much good material. Keith, I did see your earlier question. I think it was that Matt broadly covered it. I think the question went to how has Matt's background across those various organizations informed or given him the skills to cope with similar challenges you're encountering in the crypto landscape. I think you probably answered that largely already, Matt, but just to bring it back to Matt, anything you'd like to add to that? Thank you, James. That was awesome.
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I think, and thanks for that question. Well, first of all, it means you have to be pretty resilient, right? Because at the end of the day, when you're going to operate at the edge of things and new tech and the implications that it's got on everything, on society, right? You've got to be able to roll with all the changes. So I think from my perspective, going from bringing new products and platforms and technologies to the markets as a team, wasn't just me, obviously, I was heavily involved with others in doing so, has helped me to realize that part of that journey is massively about education. It's about education of the customer base, right? Or those that are curious. And I think we're going to do a similar thing. Well, we are on a similar journey to James's point around, training yourself, right? The Binance Academy has got a huge number of users. By the way, I'd strongly recommend it to anyone. I went through it before I even started and went through the different levels, and it's super useful, whether it's on margin or how crypto works, and you've got novice all the way through to advanced. But anyway, to bring it back, I think it's about education, right? It's about the ability to help others understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. And then it's also about making sure that you simplify the message, because we live in a world that's it's quite complicated, right? And crypto can get super complicated, back to the point we're making before. So I see our journey as simplifying that message, and we had to do the same thing with fintech, right? Help people understand in real world terms what it is that you're doing. So my thinking is, by going through the experiences that I have with regulators, with government, with partners, with customers, we're going to do the same thing again. Let's simplify our message, help educate the community, and bring others on this journey with us. That's what I'm hoping to bring to things based on the experience I've had.
Matt, I've just been quickly using my limited Canvas skills to add James's LinkedIn rather than Liam's to the screen, which you're hopefully seeing there. But what I was going to say, of interest to me, and this is potentially a dangerous rabbit hole to go down to, I notice there's another question from Rushdie, which we'll go to in a minute, but we've talked largely about the centralized exchange experience tonight. Some viewers, and maybe this is a better off the record conversation, we obviously it's about consumer protection. So going back to the KYC topic, and wanting to know with whom we're dealing, who's really behind the screen that's downloaded the Binance app, etc. And that's where the authorities come from, broadly, as well as that it's ultimately consumer protection. There are a lot of bad actors out there. But what I think some may, even on the call, be thinking is, well, in the more decentralized, in the DeFi space, my desire, if I would have that desire, if I'm interested in that place, if one is interested, is to not circumvent those things, but we get to that more libertarian, perhaps, mindset end of the market. And I know I'm opening a rabbit hole here, but it's been kind of eating away at me a little bit, this centralized versus DeFi topic. I don't know if you can diplomatically answer that one for us.
So that's a great topic, that one. And I think you could go on for hours about that, as with any of our topics tonight. So the way I think about it is like this. And by the way, I think it's also important to point out that we have the Binance wallet as well, right? Which is our foray into the Web3 wallet.
Yeah, so that's a DeFi wallet, right? Just your keys, your keys. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And that's a great leaping point off into the DeFi world. but it's, you know, slightly hybridized. And so, look, I think there's a world in which I talked before around the oil and water, right, and TradFi and DeFi and they're merging. There's no doubt about that. But by definition, you can't have the world of sexes and dexes really merge that much. You can have crossover, but you know, you're always going to have something that's ultimately
It's more hybrid. If anything, it's
exactly.
hybrid.
So
Yeah.
I think we're going to see much more in that hybrid space. We're going to borrow the best, and not just we, the industry and customers and builders are going to borrow the best of each and bring them together, because there's pros and cons of both worlds, and we know what they are. We don't need to go into them there. So I think we're going to see this cool Venn diagram, right, where we'll see more of that building in that space, right? You know, trying to protect customers more, but also giving them the freedom and the anonymity in some instances. All those sorts of things are going to start to merge a little bit more. You'll still ultimately have two separate worlds, but you know, again, like with the Binance wallet, you're going to see a lot more of that. I'm fascinated to see where it goes, because, you know, it seems like every other week, every other month, there's some new form of DeFi product that's coming out, and, you know, Web3 wallet. So we're watching that space carefully as well and working out how we can work within it.
Wonderful. Rushdie, might just about give the last question to Rushdie. Do you think the future belongs to specialized single utility players or to full stack ecosystems that can compete with traditional finance on every front? Wow, that's a big question.
let's just unpack that again quickly. What was the first part?
Yeah, do you think the future belongs to single utility players who are specialized? Maybe we get Rushdie to explain what he means by that, or to full stack ecosystems that can compete with traditional finance on every. So is this like a crypto versus what went before question? Maybe, I don't know.
Is Rushdie going to clarify? If not, I'll have a stab at answering it.
I feel like it's talking about the general trend we're seeing, which is a convergence to super apps, like financial super apps. So where you can do everything all in one, rather than having your crypto trading platform.
And I noticed we had Natalia Clack, SMSF expert, on the call too, actually, interestingly enough, when we talk about, you know, super app to do all things. But yeah, maybe James. Rushdie, do jump in.
Oh yes, super is a big topic. 4.1 trillion in super, and every exchange wants a piece of pie, but I have a lot of there is a lot of compliance hurdles. And I remember old Binance had a very bad reporting. So anyway, so it's a big topic, but I really want to see how you're going to change your history,
I'm
because
loving this live
I've been dealing
interaction
with your exchange for the last 7 years, so I know what it is.
Oh, sorry. And what was the question there, or is it going back to the one we just touched on?
Natalia's an expert in super. I don't know if you know Natalia, but she's an expert in self-managed super funds and more. Yeah.
Excellent. Great to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. So thank you.
So look, let's just go back to the super app piece. That's something I'm fascinated by. I think as we know in the West, we don't really have a super app. And I actually think, well, I won't go into some of the things that I've been involved in the past, but like we've looked at this in a big way. I don't know that they really work very well in the Western market. I think Westerners have a slight suspicion of, I'm going to start stereotyping, so I've got to be careful what I say here, but in the Western market, we've got slight suspicion about, you know, monopolization and everything being pulled into single platforms, and you see antitrust regulators start to break those things down as well.
It's also about payment rails, the schemes.
That's right. Privacy and as well becomes a key part of it. And why should I give you all my data so you can, you know? Whereas in other markets, particularly in Asia, the super apps are, you know, like WeChat and WeChat Pay. I used to be involved with some of those teams there. I think they've really made that work. So I don't know that culturally we're necessarily geared up. I know Elon Musk wants to turn X into a super app. I personally don't see that world evolving, because you've got a hell of a lot of payments regulation to work around, unless you're going to acquire PayPal and ram that in there. So I think I think it's a fascinating space. I like to think that what will emerge is there'll be a couple of maybe large players, but you will see single-use players that specialize in certain areas, and customers will want different providers for different purposes, because we like that choice and we like the ability to be able to move around, right? We don't like to be in a monopolized environment, someone else's metaverse, if you like. Anyway, that's just my guess. Was that too abstract, Natalia?
No, I think that was good. It was an abstract question.
So you're not aiming your platform for SMSF customers. Is it correct?
Oh, now bring it back to SMSFs. If that's the pointed question, I was going back to the earlier one before around super apps. So no, look, I think this is an area that's really interesting. It's one that's personally of interest to me, and I think it's definitely something we are looking at.
Okay.
So yes, happy to have a conversation with you whenever you want.
That's fascinating. It might just be a wrap. Rushdie has got some technical issues. We might continue that one in the chat. I'll wrap it up with Martin, who has provided a positive response to the whole chat about with respect to margin trading and the other initiatives, closing the gap on one of the other big players, I might add, who I won't name, and also that the Binance Academy is awesome, says Martin. So that might be an excellent note on which to end. Thank you, Matt Poblocki.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah,
Matt Poblocki from GM Binance ANZ, and James Quinn-Kumar, head of marketing for Binance ANZ. Thanks very much, guys. It's been absolutely brilliant. And this has been the Binance ATB AMA for September 2025.
Thanks for having us.
Cool.
Stop recording.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you, guys.